December 2012, thousands of Michigan workers rallied at the state legislature. They were trying to stop the Republican-dominated House from passing an anti-union bill called the Right to Work Law. They failed. Michigan became the 24th American state to adopt right to work. The demonstrators said the law was an attack against unions. Right-to-work laws allow a union member to refuse to pay dues, but still receive all the benefits of the collective agreement. And as the union's financial base shrinks, so does its ability to negotiate contracts and protect members. But in Michigan, the birthplace of the United Auto Workers,
I've never seen anything like this.
The middle class is plain and simple. It'll become a society of haves and have-nots.
Housing projects on communities that don't even want them and are driving up prices to the taxpayer.
If he ever becomes Premier of Ontario, Tim Hudak intends to bring American-style right-to-work laws to Canada.
A regulatory environment that says we'll get behind businesses to help them create jobs again and get out of their way. Modernizing labor rules to bring them out of the 1940s into the 21st century.
Perhaps it's not surprising then that Mr. Hudak would model his labor policy on laws in the U.S. After all, he earned his economics degree at the University of Washington. His first job after graduating was as a manager at Walmart. And like Tea Party Republicans, he wants to weaken unions and give big business more power. But how do these laws really work? To find out, we headed south.
What you see is as they weaken unions in the United States, then the middle class shrinks.
Christina Canfield speaks for Michigan's 160,000 unionized teachers.
I would expect that there'll be a certain amount of people who decide not to be members. That's lost dues. That means probably less staff and makes it harder for us to, do as good of a job as we might have done before. As the middle class shrinks, I don't think it's a coincidence that you have economic problems.
To state employee Eric Waters, passing a law giving union members the right to refuse to pay dues and still get the benefits of the collective agreement is a lot like passing a law making income tax voluntary.
I'm an American citizen. I live in a community. I want to reap the benefits of the fire services, the police protection, city services in general. But I choose not to pay taxes. That's ludicrous. That's just, it just don't make no sense.
The drive to make Michigan the 24th right-to-work state was led by a conservative think tank called the Mackinac Center. So we set out to meet the Mackinac's labor policy guy, Vinnie Vernuccio. Okay, Vinnie Vernuccio is not really all that scary. In fact, he invited us to visit him at his home in the Michigan countryside.
Hi, how are you?
Bill Gillespie.
Bill, come on in.
Thank you. We were a little taken aback, however, to see that Vinnie looks a lot like Tim Hudak. In fact, he even sounds like him.
Hey, there's these broad concepts out there that unions can modernize, they can come into the 21st century. As you know, you may not know, but union labor law in the United States hasn't changed in over 50 years. It's been half a century since the last piece of major labor legislation. I just believe in workers, and I want what's best for workers. At the Mackinac Center, we're pro-worker.
Pro-worker? I wonder what the workers who actually have to work under those right-to-work laws think. That's why we went to talk to high school teacher Dan Dennis. In 1999, Dan and his wife moved from what was at that time the non-right-to-work state of Michigan to North Carolina, a right-to-work state. And those pro-worker laws that Vinny was talking about didn't seem all that friendly.
So it was a 25% salary reduction plus over probably a 75% benefits, health and benefit package. My wife was not afforded major health care through my plan at all, and so that was very, very dramatic. A lot of newer teachers had a second job during the school year. And so to work all day and where you could go home and recuperate a little bit or do lesson planning or grade papers, they were going to another job just to make ends meet, and that's certainly going to lower the quality of education.
But is Dan's experience just a one-off, a weird anomaly? To find out, we headed for Columbus, Ohio. We went to Columbus College to talk to mathematician Darrell Miner. Miner was watching the television news one night when he saw two Republican politicians boasting about how right-to-work laws bring prosperity. So Miner decided to do something very radical. He decided to look at the facts.
Yeah, I used what's called a non-parametric statistical test. It's the Mann-Whitney rank sums test. And essentially what I did is I ranked the states from best to worst.
And what he found is that the politicians were, well, lying.
So per capita GDP was statistically significantly worse in right-to-work states. Poverty rates were significantly higher in right-to-work states. Health insurance rates were statistically lower in right-to-work states. And life expectancy was lower in right-to-work states. If you list the states from highest per capita GDP to lowest per capita GDP, 12 of the 14 most productive states, 12 of the top 14 are worker-friendly states, while 5 of the 6 least productive states are right-to-work states. The probability of the rankings occurring as they did by chance is less than 5%.
In addition, a study done by a liberal think tank in Washington, D.C. found that workers in right-to-work states make $1,500 a year less than workers in union-friendly states. So it looks like the workers in Michigan could be in for a rough ride. To find out how rough, we traveled next to South Carolina, a state that's had a right-to-work law for 59 years. If the anti-union laws Tim Hudak wants to bring to Ontario really do work, then South Carolina should be doing pretty well by now. But today, the state has the 13th highest unemployment rate in the U.S. and close to the lowest wages. And the right-to-work law was just the first step. South Carolina legislators followed up by passing a law making it illegal for state employees to bargain collectively, form unions, or strike. So I went to see Gilda Cobb-Hunter, a Democratic state congresswoman.
Nice to meet you.
Good meeting you. I hope the directions were okay. State workers are very leery about organizing. In a number of cases, they, rightfully so, recognize that even just a conversation may well mean dismissal and termination. And of course, there are always reasons given, had nothing to do with the fact that you talked to somebody about joining a union. The bad part about right to work is you can get fired here for absolutely no reason. Right to work suggests, it's your right to work. A lot of us over the years have added, it's your right to work for less.
Today, a South Carolina state highway worker makes about $15,000 a year. Government middle managers make about $35,000.
It has a lot to do with labor laws and anti-labor laws, because when we look at progress, when we look at labor and the labor movement in this country, it is clear that were it not for the labor movement and organizing back with Henry Ford and UAW and the forming of that, there would be no middle class in America. Labor unions are responsible for the middle class. Middle class has contributed to the economy of this country, as well as to this state.
The relentless attack on unions by South Carolina legislators and their corporate backers has driven everybody's wages down. Today, the state minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. And there aren't many unions left, with one exception. The port of Charleston is the backbone of the state's economy. All European goods destined for the American South, IKEA furniture, French wine, Italian clothing, must enter the U.S. through Charleston. The longshoremen are fully aware of the leverage that gives them. They've used their power sparingly, but today they earn a top rate of $32 an hour. But it didn't happen without a fight. Ken Riley is president of Local 1422 of the International Longshoremen's Association.
There were about 600 cops surrounding this whole entire terminal behind us here.
On January 19, 2000, about 150 longshoremen were picketing the Danish ship Nordana.
Every 30 or 40 yards there were police cops all around this terminal. Helicopters in the air, gunboats in the water, snipers on the roof, you name it, they were here. I've never been to war, but that's the closest I think I would ever come. It was a war scene. I remember breaking up the last struggle between one of our guys and a police officer. And when I had pushed our guy back to turn around to see if anyone else was in trouble, that's when an officer ran up and just clubbed me in the head. As soon as I lifted the cap, because I felt a crevice in my head, and then the blood just, I could even see at that point. And so two of my members hooked me on the arm and started taking me out of there.
The violent police attack swung public opinion behind the longshoremen. Their unions survived, but many did not. Today, less than 5% of South Carolina workers are union members. It's the 4th of July, and Ken and his brother Leonard are cooking up a storm at the annual Riley family barbecue. The brothers admit regaining what South Carolina workers have lost won't be easy.
Oh yeah? Without the working class, without the middle class, this country will implode. We get back to the days when there's the extremely rich and the extremely poor. And the country cannot strive without a middle class.
His friends Harriet and Sharon work for a government-funded private company that mails prescription drugs to veterans.
And the conditions, it's hard. Conditions, oh my gosh.
How so?
If it's 101 outside, it's 130 in there. And that's no lie. We've had one of our associates to come in with a thermometer and actually put it at her station, and it was reading like 127. You can't complain. Why? You need your job. You know, we're at a place where they have the right to hire, the right to fire. They don't need a reason to fire us. You know, you can come in with a bad attitude and you're gone.
Yes.
So,
and we're on a point system.
What's
8 points in your
Oh, how do you get a point?
Either being late, it's like if you're late
1 minute,
it's like a quarter of a point. Then if you call out, it's a whole point. If you're sick and you call out, it's a whole point. Then we have 2 sick days. And if you use your sick days, you still get a point. You get pointed for that.
2 6 days a month?
Yeah.
A year.
A year.
A year?
A year.
I was in an accident on about 2 weeks ago, and I called out. I got a point. for that day from calling out.
They call it a no-fault system. It's nobody's fault, but still, you know, you're going to get charged. I hate that, you know.
Yeah.
It can be an act of God, an act of Congress. They don't care.
We have people
you know.
had heart attacks and ambulance come and pick them up and they got pointed. In the hospital, they got pointed.
Seriously? Not surprisingly, Harriet and Sharon say they'd love to be in a union. So, after talking to them, we headed down to the Charleston harbor to see what the folks waiting for the 4th of July fireworks had to say. It is often said that Canadians and Americans are pretty much alike. Okay, they're more patriotic than us. We have universal Medicare and they don't, and there's those gun laws, but really we're the same, right? Well, meeting Scott Marlowe reminded us that really we're not.
We're actually from all over. We're part of a business group called Maverick, and we're trying to pass it on to our next generation and tell the kids teach them about business and buying wholesale, selling retail. Do you know about wholesale and retail, honey?
Yes.
Yeah. Which one do you buy, wholesale or retail?
Wholesale.
That's right. And then you sell it for?
Retail.
That's right. Very good. So.
How old are you?
5.5.
Wow. Where did you learn that?
From my daddy.
Oh. So that's pretty young.
Yeah, well, yeah. Austin's 8 and she's 5.5, and we're just, hey, honey, can you come over here? We're just having fun trying to pass, you know, kind of a business sense to the next generation.
Scott thinks that America's schools are failing to teach American children capitalism and the American way, which is why he brought his daughter Ariana and his 8-year-old son Austin here to sell sparkly batons. The problem with Tim Hudak's plan to import American-style labor laws to Ontario is that Canada and the U.S. are two very different countries. Union-busting, right-to-work laws in the U.S. have destroyed scores of unions and millions of good-paying jobs. So it's no surprise that the American middle class is shrinking, while the gap between rich and poor continues to grow. The question is, do we really want to be more like the U.S.?
Please don't underestimate the seriousness of this effort. These people are serious. They take no prisoners. They leave no stone unturned. And because y'all don't understand what you're dealing with, you better understand what you're dealing with and take it seriously. Otherwise, you're going to be just like us, and that ain't what you want.